Hello, I'm Bod the Booker and welcome to my channel. Today, this room is not quite as dark as this is making it seem. I mean, it's the UK in November. It's a little bit, you know, a little bit grim. But anyway, today I wanted to talk about a book that I have absolutely loved recently. And this is also part of a little tour with the incandescent people, the people who put together the book, who published this book. The book being I Am Not Raymond Wallace by Sam Kenyon. And I mentioned this recently in a weekly wrap-up. It's a book I very, very much loved. And I wanted to do just a solo review of it. And this is also going to be part of a set of events and reviews that are going on talking about the book. So it's sort of 10 days of Sam Kenyon, basically. So I'm very, very lucky to have been part of it in two ways, both with this solo review and in an interview that's going to be coming up shortly with Sam himself, which was an absolute delight to film. He's a wonderful, wonderful human, and it was just a joy. So without further ado, let's go talking about this book a bit. There will be some spoilers. I'm going to largely try and be fairly good about that. But yeah, they may come up and I'll announce before they do. So let's get started. So, this book, I Am Not Raymond Wallace, focuses in around this character, Raymond Wallace, as you may expect, who is essentially this young man working out who he is at a very pivotal part of history. So this young man, he is from England. He goes to the US for a journalism kind of apprenticeship almost, or kind of internship. And while he is there in New York at this very specific time, works out a few things about himself, not only his sexuality, but also a little bit more about his place in the world. And so we open the book with him, with a part of the book that we learn is written by him. And you almost kind of lose track of that a little bit because you're kind of lost in the narrative of it all. But this book follows this man as he kind of takes these early steps into being in the area, into being in New York, and to realizing that he's gay. And so we have these moments really early on in the book where he goes up and he meets various of his colleagues, various colleagues of his. He is sent on an assignment that takes him to a clothing shop, which is one of my favorite scenes of this whole book because there's so much codedness, and I talk about this a bit in the interview. There's a real codedness around queer language and how people identify each other. So this whole interaction is taking place in a clothing shop where Raymond and the shop assistant are talking, and underneath all of this sort of normal conversation around clothes is something around him and his sexuality, and Raymond doesn't quite realize what's going on. He hasn't quite learned how to decode this language yet, and so he has this moment where he is talking about the things he likes and sort of where he's going and all of those sorts of things. And there's so much going on underneath the surface about his sexuality. Fast forward a little bit, he then he goes to a bar. He's sort of drawn in by this idea of this pub or kind of bar that has sort of a light on, and it sort of draws him in like a sort of moth to a flame in some ways. And he goes in and realizes he's in a gay bar, and he's watching these men dance and hold each other, and there's something tender and beautiful there, and he suddenly realizes who he is. In that bar, he meets a man who he then goes on to have some kind of relationship with, and the first part of this book is mostly focused on that in this sort of 1960s New York sort of time of these people kind of working out their sexuality, who they are, and various other things. We have a second portion of the book then that goes into the 80s, where other things are going on in the background. And again, I'm not going to spoil much here, but we sort of see again another pivotal part of queer history. What's really interesting about the 1960s section is that we see this kind of malingering feeling bubbling under the surface that homosexuals are seen as this scourge upon civilized society or what have you. And so we have all these characters who are, this assignment that he's working on, that Raymond's working on, is a piece around, sort of moral corruption of the nation and how homosexuals are the ones causing it. And we kind of get this sort of McCarthyist sort of horrible, kind of toxic atmosphere of all of these people building towards something really quite gruesome and quite grim. And in the meantime, Raymond is essentially playing both fields here. He's going to these gay bars and feeling free and being able to be himself, but then he goes into work the next day and has to sort of grumble a little bit and try and water down this article about homosexual sin, and do so in a way that also doesn't alert people around him to who he might be. And so he's walking this very, very fine tightrope. And this sort of takes us through the main sort of part of the book. And the next bit is going to be difficult to talk about without going into some spoilers. I'm just going to quickly note before I drop the spoiler curtain here, it then sort of flashes forward to many years in the future. And this is on the blurb, so this is not revealing a lot here. We then have 2003, which is when Raymond's son discovers some of these old writings and then seeks to try and find out more about the situation itself. Before I break for the spoiler curtain thing, I just want to say this is a gorgeous, gorgeous book. A book I absolutely adored. I already love Incandescent anyway. I think they're brilliant people. I was very lucky to go to a sort of relaunch party of this book recently with Sam, and managed to get to meet him in person after having done a Zoom interview with him. Wonderful, wonderful human, and please do check out this book. One of my favourites of the year, easily. So, with that said, I'm going to go and drop the spoiler curtain. Please feel free to click away if you don't want any spoilers. They're not going to be major spoilers, but yeah, there we go. And so, the light spoilers. As I mentioned, we then flash forward into the 2000s, into 2003, where Raymond's son is trying to find out more. And this basically starts to then be part of this story of how they all interact with each other. We have Raymond's son, who is trying to work out kind of who his father is. He never really knew him particularly well. There's a lot that wasn't said, and so he has to try and reconstruct this idea of who his father is through his writings, and through his stories. And if you think, his stories at this point are written for a specific audience, right? You know, they're written and things are concealed. So Joe, his son, I have to get it right around, because Joe, his son, is on a bit of a quest to find Joey, who is the lover of Raymond, who I spoke about in that bar. And this then leads to this really interesting sort of moment throughout the book of how well do you really know somebody through their writing, through the letters they leave, what things really tell you the most, because there are things that he wouldn't have been told as a son, but are also really authentic to his knowledge of his father. However, there are also things that have been put into the writing that he would never have said to his son. And so you get these sort of moments as they try to piece this back together. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous book. It's written with a lot of heart, a lot of love, and some really beautiful, beautiful scenes. And I really do urge you to check it out. Being that we are also in December, which like bomb, stop, shut up about in December. But you know, also support a local indie press, and the wonderful Incandescent. Anyway, the interview will be coming shortly, and you'll have a chance to see me attempt to ask questions of a very, very interesting man in Sam Kenyon. Please do check it out. I hope you enjoyed the book if you get a chance to read it. And yeah, I've been Bob the Booker. Take care and speak to you all soon. Bye bye.